Good morning. We're going to start now. This is the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 150162, 150163, 150164, and resolutions number 150179. Ms. Lewis, please read the titles of the bills and resolutions.
Bill number 150162, an ordinance to adopt the capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2016 through 2021 inclusive. Bill number 150163, an ordinance to adopt the fiscal 2016 capital budget. Bill number 150164, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2016. And resolution number 150179, providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2016 through 2020 and incorporating proposed changes with respect to fiscal year 2015, which is to be submitted by the Mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, the Authority, pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement authorized by an ordinance of this Council, approved by the Mayor on January 3rd, 1992, Bill number 1563-A, by and between the City and the Authority.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Today, we continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider various bills read by Ms. Lewis that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal 2016, a capital program, and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal 2016 through fiscal 2021. Today, we hear testimony from the administration on the capital budget and capital program. I'd ask for administration witnesses to please come forward. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Council President Clark and members of City Council. I'm Gary Jastrab, the Executive Director of the City Planning Commission. With me is Rebecca Reinhardt, the city's Budget Director. We're here today to present for your review and consideration the recommended fiscal year 2016 to 2021 capital program and fiscal year 2016 capital budget approved by the City Planning Commission at its meeting of February 27, 2015. The Philadelphia Home Rule Charter directs the City Planning Commission to prepare and submit to the Mayor a recommended capital program and budget. The recommended program is a 6-year plan for investing in the city's physical and technology infrastructure, neighborhood and community facilities, and public buildings. The budget recommends spending appropriations for the first year of the 6-year program. The projects included in the recommended program and budget support the overall goals of the city. Philadelphia becomes one of the safest cities in America. The education and health of Philadelphians improve. Philadelphia is a place of choice. Philadelphia becomes the greenest and most sustainable city in America. And Philadelphia government works efficiently and effectively with integrity and responsiveness. Beginning each September, the City Planning Commission staff works closely with the Finance Department's Office of Budget and Program Evaluation, the Department of Public Properties, Capital Projects Division, and city operating departments to prepare the recommended capital program and budget. It's a collaborative, labor-intensive, and iterative process, and we believe it yields a program and budget that carefully balance the city's facility needs with limited capital resources. As in years past, the availability of city tax-supported general obligation, or GO, bond funding for capital projects is set by 2 interrelated factors: the city's debt limit, which is established by the Pennsylvania Constitution, and the city's financial or borrowing capacity. The actual value initiative resulted in a substantial increase to the constitutional debt limit. Nevertheless, the city's ratio of debt service to total expenses will continue to restrict its ability to issue general obligation debt. A relatively high ratio of debt service to obligations will not only crowd out other operating expenditures, but if the ratio gets too high, it could also result in a reduction of the city's bond rating, thereby increasing the costs of borrowing. Rating agencies have consistently cited the city's high level of fixed costs as a reason for its relatively low bond rating compared with other cities. For the fiscal year 2016 capital budget, the administration proposes to spend $169.6 million of city-supported capital funding raised through new GO bonds issued by the city, and $9.6 million of pre-financed GO loans for a total of $179.2 million. This is the highest level of funding since fiscal year '02 and represents a 26% increase in new GO funding from last year and a 78% increase over the average annual amount of GO funding during the fiscal year 2009 to fiscal year 2015 period. The average annual GO funding amount during those years was $95.5 million. Key projects include continued investment to improve and modernize the city's technology infrastructure, repave streets and repair bridges, support neighborhood commercial centers, industrial districts, and build better connections to and along our riverfronts, purchase much-needed specialty vehicles and equipment for departmental operations, make improvements to park and recreation department facilities, purchase new voting machines citywide, and continued programmed improvements to police, fire, and free library facilities. A total of 69 projects for 20 city departments are included in the fiscal 16 budget year. In addition, 283 projects totaling $326.2 million of previously appropriated GO funds are recommended to be carried forward into fiscal year 2016. When all budget year funding is considered, including federal, state, and other sources, these projects total nearly $3 billion of improvements for the fiscal year 2016 budget year in the recommended capital program. For the 6-year program, $831.4 million of city tax-supported bond funding is planned for public improvements and neighborhood investments. When all sources of funding are included, the recommended capital program includes more than $8.9 billion of improvements during the fiscal year 2016 through 2021 period. Since the projects comprising the recommended capital program and budget support the 5 city goals mentioned earlier, I'd like to cite several of the most important budget year projects supporting these goals. Projects that help Philadelphia become one of the safest cities in America, increase safety from crime, emergencies, and accidents at home, school, in the neighborhood, and at work and play, include more than $7 million of new and previously authorized city funds recommended for fire and police department facilities across the city for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing improvements, roof renovations, critical window and door replacements. Included is $1 million for a master plan for police and fire facilities citywide to best understand overall needs for capital investment going forward. The Philadelphia prison system is recommended to use more than $7.7 million of funding for security and infrastructure improvements at its facilities in Northeast Philadelphia, as well as land acquisition for a replacement facility in future years. Within fleet management, $15 million in new and previously authorized city funds are recommended for purchase of specialty vehicles for various departments, including fire and streets. This is a $2.2 million increase over last year's amount. Projects that ensure the education and health of Philadelphians improve help to create complete neighborhoods with ample cultural, health, and human services opportunities. The city has continued its commitment to the branch library improvement program and has recommended the final $1.5 million of its $4.5 million pledge, which began in the fiscal year 2013 capital budget. The $4.5 million city investment brought in $22.2 million in private funds to assist with capital improvements at the neighborhood branch libraries. More than $2.4 million in new and previously authorized city funds are recommended for the health department's facilities, including $1.8 million to complete work at a new Health Center 2 in South Philadelphia, developed in partnership with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. $1.2 million in new city funding is recommended for site, building, and infrastructure improvements at the Philadelphia Zoo, which provides a great educational opportunity for the city's children and adults alike. Projects that make Philadelphia a place of choice, promote economic development and job creation, and strengthen major infrastructure. More than $512.9 million of federal, state, private, and city self-sustaining operating funds and revenue bonds are recommended to enable Philadelphia International Airport to improve service for air and surface transportation to and from Philadelphia through airfield and facilities improvements and safety and security projects. The Commerce Department is recommended to invest $5 million in city funds to improve neighborhood commercial centers and $6.5 million in city funds for infrastructure improvements to support major projects in Center City and University City, including the new Comcast Tower for Market Street East, the Reading Viaduct, and the 40th Street Trolley Portal. More than $24.8 million in city funding is recommended for the Streets Department for street reconstruction and resurfacing and ADA-conforming sidewalk ramps, the restoration of historic streets, and other improvements to city stairways and retaining walls, as well as federal highway infrastructure. This leverages $18.5 million in federal, state, and private funds. This is a $4 million increase in reconstruction, resurfacing, streets, and ADA ramps and curbs from fiscal year 2015. More than $36.4 million in city, federal, state, and private funding is recommended for master plan implementation and other improvements along the Central and North Delaware River and the Schuylkill River waterfront. The Philadelphia Museum of Art is recommended to use $4.5 million in city funding to make basic infrastructure improvements for life safety and operational purposes in support of its multi-year facilities master plan. Projects that help Philadelphia become the greenest and most sustainable city in America focus on parks and recreation and promote environmental and sustainable practices. The Office of Sustainability is recommended to use $500,000 in city funds for energy efficiency and sustainability improvements at city facilities as part of other capital investments. More than $18.7 million in new and previously authorized city funds are recommended for improvements to park and recreation trails, parks, recreation centers, pools, cultural facilities, and other assets and infrastructure across city neighborhoods, and for projects with broader reach, including the Benjamin Franklin Parkway, the Mann Center in West Park, and the Discovery Center in East Park. Fleet Management continues its multi-year project of replacing antiquated fuel tanks and environmentally remediating fuel sites using $1.3 million in recommended city and private funding. SEPTA bridge, track, station, vehicle, and fare collection improvements help make transit an attractive alternative to driving. More than $3.8 million in new and previously authorized city funds are recommended to leverage more than $258.6 million in state, federal, and other monies for such projects. These highlights demonstrate the variety of projects recommended for funding in fiscal year 2016 and show how the recommended capital program seeks to make strategic and targeted investments in Philadelphia's infrastructure using our limited resources for the greatest public benefit. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My colleagues and I would be happy to address any questions that you may have. Please note that the leadership of city departments is present, in addition to representatives from the Department of Finance, Office of Budget and Program Evaluation, and the Department of Public Property to assist in answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. A couple of quick questions in the first round. My annual question, the Montgomery Avenue Bridge. Normally, Clarina Tolson is here. I see one of the members in the audience knows what I'm talking about, my good friend, Commissioner.
Yeah. I think, Commissioner...
I've seen a number of bridges get redone and open up, the great fanfare, the South Street Bridge, and a number of other bridges, and that came about way after I started complaining about the Montgomery Avenue Bridge in the heart of Strawberry Mansion, where you, frankly speaking, you have to walk in the street to get across the bridge. Where are we at with that? Had to put my council district hat on for a moment.
Good morning, Council President and members of City Council. My name is Dave Perry. I'm the Streets Commissioner. I'm happy to report, Councilman, that the project is fully funded for 2016. The design work is approximately 90% complete. We expect to be advertising this project next September and going into construction in the spring of 2017. In the meantime, we continue to monitor the bridge, repair any potholes that are out there, remove graffiti, and otherwise keep it in a reasonable condition.
Okay. All right. You anticipated my question. Good job, Commissioner. Another question with respect to the facility, and to some degree somewhat somber. As we all know, we recently had a police officer killed, Officer Wilson. Very sad time for us all. And at the 22nd Police District, he was a really great person and a great officer. So I stopped by to kind of talk to the captain and some of the officers there, just kind of hang out with them for a while. But unfortunately, while I was sad, I was also embarrassed at the condition of that site. I do believe probably the first year, if not the first, the second year that Commissioner Ramsey was here, we had a question about replacing that site. And again, a number of facilities, particularly the wonderful facility that's going up in Councilwoman Blackwell's district, the new headquarters is moving ahead. And I haven't really have a sense of what's going on. Are we going to replace that, get those officers out of that archaic condition, or, I mean, it is literally ridiculous.
Okay, so there's, to answer your question in two parts, there is significant amount of money available right now to upgrade police and fix police and fire stations across the city. And there is a plan that the Public Property Commissioner, Bridget Greenwald, has been working on to spend down those funds and upgrade police and fire stations across the city. Specifically with regards to the 22nd district, right now what our plans are is to put money, the fiscal 16 capital budget proposes to use $1 million to fund a master study for police and fire stations, which will look at what the use and what the need of the departments is, and then that study will be used as a guide to which stations are replaced or possibly co-located. So right now, there's not specific plans to replace the 22nd, but I think overall, there is an understanding that there's a need to both upgrade the police and fire stations, which we do have a plan for, and also probably to replace certain ones.
All right, that answer is like, I mean, we had this conversation, and Ms. Brown, I'm not even sure if you were here, literally in the beginning of the administration. And we talked in great detail, and subsequent to that conversation, there were, I think, at a minimum 2 stories on the news about the conditions of that station. And we even talked about a site, the 22nd and Diamond, that was strategically located in the middle of that district. And there was some thought that there was going to be some movement to acquire the site because it was not all publicly owned. And you're here today telling me that the only thing that's been done is money's been put aside to have a strategic assessment of the entire city of Philadelphia. And that will take who knows how long, because the next administration might come in and say, you know what, that's not important.
Well, I think
in the same breath, we're increasing the capital expenditure to record levels since 2002. And we can't figure out a way to get those police officers out of that dump, because that's what I'm going to call it. It's a dump, right? And I hate to call anyone's home a dump, but that's what it looks like. It looks exactly like it did when I was a little kid growing up in that neighborhood. And I think I may have visited somebody there, you know, just briefly. Wasn't there as a guest. But
No,
the reality is, I'm seriously, this is like ridiculous. It is embarrassing to go in that and to talk about the wonderful officers of the 22nd and that they are, and to have them work in that facility. We're talking about building all these other world-class facilities all over the city, and the people that are some of the most important municipal employees have to work in those conditions.
Well, to that point, when I said we have significant resources available for police and fire stations, we actually do. There is $16 million available right now to be spent for police and fire stations, and we're going to be...
I'm asking you about the 22nd Police District.
The 22nd, okay, I answered
all
on...
honesty and
Okay.
all due respect, I really
Sure.
don't want to hear about all the other stations.
Okay.
I'm talking to you about a station that I talked to you guys about day one, first or second year when you came in. Here we are at the end of the term, and there's been no movement whatsoever on that police station. After a number of news stories about the conditions, and you're telling me nothing's been done.
Well, I wasn't saying that. I was trying to address your question in a different way. But in terms of actually replacing it, you're right. We're not moving on replacing it right now.
Is there a reason? I mean, beyond the traditional budget speak?
I mean, I think
Is it not important?
No, it is important. It's all important in terms of the condition of our facilities that the police officers work in. It's very important to us. And that's why we have developed a plan in terms of that Bridget could speak more to. Yeah. Okay. And she's here now to speak about it.
I mean, we even had a purchaser of the site, and they offered a couple of $1 million for the site because, as you know, it's right in the middle of the Temple University area, where there's significant value on land, and we decided not to move forward on that. I mean, I don't know what kind of signal that sends. We can stand at the police officer's funeral and talk about how important our officers are, but yet it's okay to leave people in that kind of facility. I mean,
I don't think we're saying it's okay.
Well, if you don't do anything about it, then you're saying that it's not important.
Bridget Collins, Greenwald Public Property Commissioner. You are right. We are not in the process of purchasing a new 22nd Police District. I can tell you what we're doing to the existing 22nd. What we've done is the Department of Public Property, in conjunction with the police department, has done a full assessment of every single police station, every single police district. So what we have now is a master list of all the issues in every police district. So we're going down them. So the 22nd will receive substantial upgrades, but just in the existing facility at the moment.
Have you been in there, Bridget?
Yes.
I mean, are you serious? Upgrades? The configuration of that building is like the same as it was like 30, 40, 50 years ago. These little small rooms. I mean,
Yeah, what we plan to do is upgrade it so it's more modern looking space and more upgraded so the systems will work better and the environment will be better. But unfortunately, for right now, it is still in the existing space.
you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to contact a TV station. We're going to do a walkthrough over there. I would hope that they would let me in. I'm going to talk to the captain. Because, I mean, this is ridiculous for you to sit here and tell me you're going to upgrade that site.
Well, I think
It is
also
so outdated. It is
the
like-
master plan study, though, I think is very important and will be the blueprint that the next administration can use to replace stations across the city, and if the 22nd is selected as one of those stations and is highlighted one of those stations, then that's the direction. I know it's not in the time frame that you would like, and I can see.
Oh, well, it's not like I haven't been talking about this for a while. I ask you about it every year. You just basically blow me off.
We're not blowing you off. I'm sorry that you're taking it that way.
Yes, you are.
I'm not. No, I really, I think right now, speaking today, we do have plans, and that's what I've been trying to get across in terms of having money available right now for police stations. Bridget having
So you're sitting here today, and you're telling me that you increased your capital budget by how much over last year? $20, $30 million?
Yeah.
And you can't figure out a way to have the 22nd Police District as a part of that increased funding after having this conversation every year.
I think that
talking
We
about
can-
river walks and, I mean, are you serious?
We can talk, I mean, we can definitely talk about it. I think what we were saying is that there is a significant amount of money, and if we, on the master plan study, if that's what comes out, then that's the direction we'll go in. But I hear your frustration.
This is exactly what I was talking about yesterday at the start of the budget process. We were talking about having a budget discussion to discuss priorities and how a river walk is more important than giving the police officer a decent place to work.
I don't think that that's actually what we're saying, though. I think it's a balance of
Not what
priorities.
you're saying is what you're doing.
No, we have a significant amount of money available to upgrade police and fire stations, so we do prioritize that.
All right, I'll come back. I think my time is up. Chair recognizes Councilman Good.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's stay on the recurring theme of I ask this question every year, and I hope I get a new answer. Can Mr. Greenberger come to the witness table? Good morning.
Morning, Councilman.
We are proposed to spend $831 million in city tax-supported bond funding over the course of the capital program, $169 million just next year. The question I've been asking, particularly for the last 3 years, is how will Philadelphians be employed by that expenditure? More specifically, I'd like to know if you can update me on the implementation of First Source Jobs Policy in general, as it relates to Bill 150010, incorporating it into economic opportunity plans, and whether a First Source Jobs Policy will be applied to the capital program. That's the question.
Okay. Just give me a second here.
This is total jobs.
Yeah. So let me start with some numbers and then get into your questions. All right. The capital budget generates approximately, is this a number, Rebecca?
This, from fiscal 16 through 21, the 831 million you just referenced, right, that's the,
Okay, generates approximately 5,200 jobs. There are a number of, they come with EOPs that have aspirational goals around local hiring. They're monitored by the OEO, but we cannot legally demand that those jobs be local, but we can incentivize it and encourage it, which we do and through the monitoring process.
I don't believe that's true, but we can walk through it.
Okay, but you could go to the other part of your question, just remind me. I'm sorry.
The first question was, tell me
Oh,
where
the
we're at
first
with the
source.
First Source Jobs
I'm sorry,
Policy
first source. Right.
as it applies to economic opportunity plans, and then will the First Source Jobs Policy be applied to the capital program? And my understanding of the capital program as it relates to Commerce Department economic development projects is that we make public improvements as a matter of investment in private projects. And so that would trigger any number of things in terms of First Source Jobs Policy. So I don't think you're right in what you just said.
Well, then on First Source, we have developed regulations and procedures around that, and I think you're going to see the first of those projects now coming online, and people, we are those projects then are developing their own plans, which we will be presenting to you.
I'm talking about $831 million being spent over the course of the program, $169 million being spent for fiscal year 16. I'm asking where are the jobs for Philadelphia residents? There are economic opportunity plans required under some of these projects, and now the First Source Jobs Policy, because of Bill 150010, now applies as incorporated into the economic opportunity plan. And so where we're at.
So on the ones that are producing subsequent jobs that are not in the public sector, you're going to be seeing plans that outline how First Source is going to work on those projects.
Okay, fair enough. Let me go back in this question from Ms. Reinhardt. I asked a question 2 years ago similar to this question. Your written response, the question was how many Philadelphians will be employed through the capital program. Your written response was we don't know how many Philadelphians will be employed through the FY2014 capital budget, so we are unable to predict where workers will reside. We can only estimate the number of total construction jobs to be created, which is 730. While we cannot predict where workers will reside, we are now able to track the employment of Philadelphians for public work projects through the Labor Compliance Plan Software, LCP. Is that actually true? And if so, tell me how many Philadelphians we have employed through capital program.
Okay, that software is under Angela Dowd-Burton. So I think I would ask her to come up and, yeah.
I don't want her to come up yet.
Oh.
I'm not sure I want her to come
So-
up at all. This is why. If I ask the same question every year, which is how many Philadelphians are employed through the capital program, I shouldn't immediately get an answer that we can't do that. It's not legal to do that, because it is legal to do that for certain projects. And you should have to answer that question in terms of how many employees, how many Philadelphians have been employed under the capital program. And you can just send me that in writing.
Okay, be happy to.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Then, Councilman. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, albeit,
Wasn't me.
I know who it was.
Wasn't.
Once again, I want to repeat what I said yesterday, that this is our 8th budget process, and we don't always agree, but we thank you for your diligence and your service, and hopefully, if you choose to, continue into the next administration, because, you know, we've gotten to at least predict what answers we're going to get, and which ones we're just not going to get. And at least there's some comfort in the predictability of that.
Well, I don't know if I should say thank you to that, but
So it is. So I have a couple of questions, and some of them stem from last year and the year before, and the year before that.
Okay.
We went on an undertaking of trying to chronicle the over 200 steps that it takes to process through a capital budget and through procurement,
Right.
and to cut them down. Have we made any progress on that? And ergo, the time it takes to do a capital project.
okay, I think the Public Property Commissioner will address that question.
Hi, Bridget Collins, Greenwell Public Property Commissioner. Good morning, Councilman.
Good morning.
Yes, we've actually made some significant progress in cutting down the capital process through 3 different processes within the capital process, if that makes any sense. So we have just started what we've called, and I may have spoken about this before, Gary Napick may have, a job order contracting process, which has cut off significant time on the beginning end of the project, the administrative time. So basically, it is, you actually, when you're bidding on a capital job now, you're not going through the whole entire public works process every single time. You're bidding on the cost of like materials for the job, the length of time of the job, what you need for the job. It's almost like if you went into, this is the easiest way to explain it. If you went into an auto body shop, you had to get your fender fixed, they give you the price, the fenders, the setting, the labor, and that's what we're doing. So we're getting costs on that, so it's cutting out a tremendous amount of time, and actually we're
How much
on.
time?
It's cut out at least 14 weeks, so just on the administrative end.
So what were we before, and what are we
We
now?
were,
on average?
on the low end, we were at 74 weeks. So we've cut off that much, but
So, no, how much, no,
Yeah.
how much was it?
74 to, what was that, 500, I mean, that 590 was some real outlying number, weeks, but 74 was on the low end, yeah, average end. So we've cut off 14 so far off the beginning of the process. So now we're going through this right now. We just have our first couple test cases. We anticipate the work will be done faster, and then on the back end, we'll save some time. But we don't have those figures yet because we haven't actually gone through a whole process yet. That's,
So we have a roughly 10-year backlog on some of our items?
no.
What is
That-
our average backlog?
we don't have a backlog per se. We have 250 active projects. So I wouldn't call them backlogs. They're all in different parts of the process. Some are in design, some are in construction, some are in closeout, some are in the bid phase.
So backlog is relative. If you're a district council person that can't go across a bridge, it's a backlog. If you know, so all of this is relative, but I want to quantify that if you cut out 40 steps out of 250, what that means by way of time of the average project. And so by operating time, we want to know what what some of that is. And
What can be
if
done
you could give
instead?
that to...
Sure.
In writing to the president, that would be good. Second thing, and thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
OIT represents 7th out of the 20 capital project departments. Represents about 3% of our capital budget. Is that correct?
That it represents 3%
Yes.
of, well, IT, on the general fund side, the IT is about 29 million out of 179 million. So it's, I guess it depends which, are you looking at the total with water and aviation? Depends on how you look at it. I'll believe
I'm looking
you.
at it sideways, definitely.
Sideways?
Yeah. So give me that it's a significant department.
It's significant. I would say it's even more than what you're saying,
And
yes.
so when I look at the description, and I'll end with this, and then on my second term, be prepared to answer this. It says network infrastructure stabilization enhancement and stabilize and secure enhanced network infrastructure that provides computing functions for the city's business operations. What is that? And then in another line item, they say, similarly, to improve and enhance and da-da-da-da. And they don't specifically say what
Exactly.
we are buying.
Sure.
And so it's like a vague, nebulous kind of description, and I just, it's way too much, and I don't know if we did a opinion poll, yes, I'm not a tech person. I would be the first one to tell you I cannot boot up a doggone thing, but that's why I have staff. But I can tell you that I do not get a clear description for this amount of money. There
Right.
is so much more description in other departments about what we are getting for these dollars. And I still don't understand that. And we've had this discussion last year. So by the time I had a couple of questions last year. How many cell phones do we have? How many lines do we have as the city of Philadelphia? How many of them are active? How many of them, and
Sure, I remember.
so I remember too. So what I'm saying is, we need more description for this kind of money that we're putting forth to this department.
Sure. I think in terms of the detail under the IT's budget, we have that, and I hear what you're
So we
saying.
don't have it, though.
Right, so we can get that to you. I mean, the network infrastructure, it gets divided into items such as telecommunication infrastructure upgrades, which are the phone system, public safety infrastructure, security improvements, firewall upgrades. I mean, but I can send, I have the sheet, so I could make copies and give it all
But
to you.
I think it would be helpful
Sure.
if we're deciding
And then this
about-
also has all the business application projects, so,
Do you ever see the commercial where they say, and this disclaimer, and they talk real fast?
Yeah.
And that, that's how I feel.
Okay.
When I deal with this, and each year it's like that. And I don't, I know we have an independent system, but we have to interface with you guys. And I remember last year somebody telling me they couldn't send me a document because they didn't have that model software, and like it was obsolete. And I don't know, from year to year that I've been here, this is my 8th budget time, how we progress in a number of ways. And I saw one description that talked about police infrastructure. Oh, okay, I understand and I get that. But then there's this blank check we write, and I don't know what comes back.
right, well, right, it shouldn't be, we can definitely provide you the information. We can provide it to you in a few minutes, actually, like just by copy. And, yeah, and then, the IT commissioner can come up and address where we are.
I'd love this, President. Please explain. And there's a law in the federal government, there's a law, Mr. President, that requires people to say it in most commonly used words in plain English. Could we apply that?
I do my
Who are you?
best. I do my best to kind of explain
say
it
your
in plain English. Council President Adela Bade, CIO for the City of Philadelphia.
Sorry, say your name for the record, please.
I'm
Just
sorry.
state your name for the record.
Adela Bade, CIO for the City of Philadelphia.
Thank you.
So we provide an exhaustive narrative on each project. I can assure you that the finance or the budget department will not allow us to, will not write a blank check and that we could spend it on anything we want, frankly. It might have been summarized for the benefit of squeezing it into the plan, but there's
So can you help me to tell the difference between item, and I'm gonna stop because the bell has rung. Item 1, and I'm gonna say, what are some of the other? To me, they just seem like, other than the police department and the switching in public safety for the state police, it says we're gonna enhance, improve, it just says generally what you're gonna do, and for this amount of money, we have to do better than that.
So we do break out public safety slightly separately. The first item really speaks to the fact that there's a unified infrastructure that cuts across all the departments. The whole purpose, the strategic direction that we're trying to implement is just make sure that there's a unified, standardized utility across all the departments so that we could reduce our cost of running the operation. So it's listed that way, but we can certainly break it down into individual projects, individual expenditures
How many
even.
phone lines do we have?
I don't understand the relationship between the two, but there are 23,752 phone lines.
Right, and do we, and how many of them are attached to an actual body, and do we need that many?
There are actual more bodies than that, but we have gone through a process to determine if phones are inactive for a period of time, then they go on the deactivated list.
How many phones were deactivated last year?
I could certainly get that for you.
Okay, and how many cell phones do we have?
I have 2,547 cell
How many of them are
phones.
active?
They were all active.
Okay, so now you've got a complete list of fax lines and this, that, and the other that we have. So my point to you
Hopefully trying to
is-
minimize fax lines, but yes.
So my point to you is, have we reduced over the last 4 years the number of lines and where? Have we, and how has that reduced cost? Can you provide that?
Yes, in fact, and we met in your office in August of last year, and we
Right.
offered to meet with you monthly so that we can, actually, so that you could see the progress from month to month.
So do you have the progress now?
Our operating budget is on the 14th, and I'm happy to bring that, because that is an operating expense. I
But-
was ready to talk
so
about the capital
in
today.
anticipation of that, could you provide that? Because you know I'm going to ask you.
I've got 14 days to make sure I've got the right answer.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
Goes by quicker than you think.
It goes by very quick, that's right.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Nielsen.
Before you go, as you're sitting there, sir, does your capital improvement allow the use of iPhones or Apple technology, all this improvement money? Just a yes or no is great.
That is not a capital eligible expenditure.
Okay, so you're upgrading our systems, correct? So the capital upgrade to our system, does it include being able to use Apple technology? How's that? Is that better stated for you? That is a capital improvement, right?
So cell
It's a
phone,
yes or no is great. Not cell phone, Apple technology, because we can't use it. We know, we went through this discussion in my office. I just want to see if that's part of it, that's all. And then we'll talk about it when you come back up, because I don't want to waste my 5 minutes.
yeah, so my job is to provide the best solution at the least cost possible to the taxpayers, and we pick solutions that we could justify. Apple currently today is not listed as one of those things.
Okay, thank you,
There
sir.
are comparable devices that meet and exceed even the demands from
think-
everyone today.
I think Apple didn't have the security that we needed in our systems. That's how you told me last time, right? When we met.
That we did not
Apple wasn't a
focus.
secure enough platform for
Yeah.
us to use. in
Currently,
our
there's no
cities.
contract that would allow us to procure Apple devices.
All right, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Ms. Reinhardt, in your testimony today, you mentioned that you have $16 million available to do improvements, I want to take us back to the police and fire facilities. How, is that 16 million just sitting there doing nothing? Collecting interest, I hope?
You're saying 1.6, right? 16?
Yeah,
No, that's what I said. I just wanted to make sure.
16, that's
Yeah.
what you said.
No, no.
You
Yeah,
said
we're
16.
talking.
Well, you said you currently have $16 million
Yes.
available that you haven't spent or last year.
It is
You're gonna
available,
carry forward
and
for next year?
that's what the Public Property Commissioner, Bridget Greenwald, has developed a plan for spending that money. So
So-
that would be, I mean, she could
Okay.
address, she
You
could
don't have to
address that.
it. No, this is good. So she has a plan to spend that money, and she mentioned all the projects the commissioner has. However, you want an additional $1 million to go develop a plan to improve these facilities? Instead of spending it on like a firehouse or a police station that needs the $1 million, you want to come up with a new plan?
So the difference there is the $1 million for a master plan study is to look at the need of the department and how that fits with the facilities. So it could be that you have a facility in decent condition, but there's way too many officers assigned to that facility, so therefore it no longer meets the needs of that district. So there's issues besides condition that might lead the city to want to replace or to make a change with facilities, and that's what the $1 million is for.
Okay, so unlike some of the members in here, I haven't had the chance to go through the last 8 budgets, so just bear with me if I'm a little new here. Usually we do the state process, and it's actually a little more revealing. So you're telling us that the administration has had no master plan over the last 8 years to fix our police and fire, to facilitate our first responders. They've had no master plan. And
There
now,
Well, let me answer your question.
So now we're going to put money aside to develop a master plan on the way out the door?
There's two issues. Let me answer your,
Well,
give me
no,
1 minute. No, I want, if you're gonna,
We only have 5 minutes.
but if you're going,
Does the administration, over the last 8 years, have they had any master plan to fix the facilities of our first responders?
yes, we do have a plan to fix the
Can you please share that with
facilities.
the council so we can look at it
Okay,
before we
Bridget.
invest another $1 million to come up with a new master plan?
They're different, but of course we can provide that.
A master plan is a master plan. I mean, if
It's-
they had no master plan, if the administration...
I will just add one thing before the Public Property Commissioner can speak, but as I said, there is a plan that's in place now to fix the police and fire stations.
Okay.
The plan that, the $1 million, what we're talking about is to look at actual needs and how that could be changing in the department and how to best use, to meet those needs. They're different items.
Councilman, take a couple of more minutes, please.
Okay.
I want to hear this, the master plan and the
And a plan and
master
a
plan
man-
part 2. I want to hear the difference.
Hi, Bridget Collins, Greenwald, Public Property Commissioner. I can speak to the assessment plan and what that means and what that was done. So, yes, is this a brand-new assessment? Yes, it was done, it was completed over the summer. What we have done, we have made the plan available to every member of council, and Councilman Nielsen, I'll get you the link and we'll get you a copy of that as well and send it to the
Thank you,
chair. There have been various council members, some council members themselves, Councilman Jones, Councilman Blackwell, former Councilman Kenny sat on the actual committee with us, and then staff members, Matt from your staff was on it. And what we did was we shared the assessment with them, actually explained what the assessment entailed, and that was going to each and every police and fire, it was both of them, police and fire district, doing a complete assessment. So we had our facility staff, who I have the utmost confidence in, they're the guys that work around here and the guys that do all the trades work on the police and fire facilities, go out, do an analysis of the site work, the condition of the building, a structural analysis of the building, the age of the systems, so the boilers, the HVAC systems, all those, did a complete plumbing assessment. Site work, some of the issues that we have with some of our facilities, like the parking lots, like cave in and get sinkholes and whatnot. So they did a complete of the exterior, interior. So it's a very complete study. So each facility has about, I would say, 10 to 15 pages of their assessment on that. And then what was done was they were each given a ranking. So like a 1 through 5, like 1 being fixed immediately, 5 being, unfortunately, we didn't have as many 5s as we would like, but 5 being this is great. You don't have to do anything with this facility, with this piece of the facility at this point. So what we did then was we took all the 1s, 2s, and at the suggestion of the committee from council, the 3s as well, and put them all together, and that's what developed this plan, which we're working through now. So what we're doing is hitting each of these facilities from a facility standpoint. I believe what Rebecca's talking about with this master study, it would be a combination of that and an operational more of assessment of the police, like operations, whether they should be in, you know, a co-location, or maybe they shouldn't be in this part of the city, they should be in that part. Right, that's what that is. So it'd be a combination of the two, but I'm confident in the assessment that we've done of going out and actually tackling some of these facility issues in the facilities as they exist now in the current facilities.
Okay, and that assessment was done last summer?
Yes.
Okay, so again, Ms. Reinhardt, I'm going to ask you the question again. Prior to last summer, has the administration invested any money in developing a plan to fix our first responder facilities?
Before the plan that...
For last summer.
Bef-
I mean, that's 7 years into administration. I mean,
Right, I think that we did not have, I mean, I would defer to Bridget on that response, but we put money into police and fire stations, but I don't think we had the level of detailed plan that we now have.
this million, the plan that we're talking about, I mean, I know this is just on first responders because that's something that resonates in everybody's heart and mind. Do we have some kind of plan or study on all city-owned facilities in the city? I mean, is there an assessment plan? Because I know they're not the only buildings falling apart. Has there been a plan over the last 8 years and assessments of all city-owned facilities, including our parks and rec, including our rec centers that our kids can't go in and, you know, because they're falling apart, anything like that? Do we have that? Is there a master plan?
I don't believe there has been. I think the plans that are something that we've started to do that over the last year or two to get a better handle on some of the needs. I mean, we did have several years of a fiscal crisis that...
That's for the fiscal crisis. That's what we always we go back to, the fiscal crisis, because it's mentioned, I can only imagine how many times. So we've had no plans. I'm going to stop here because it's, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to ask the same questions that you and Councilman Nielsen had just asked. It was my understanding that as far back as 2009, there was a grievance filed by the FOP about the deplorable conditions in the police stations. My own personal experience was in litigating against the prison cap many years ago, that there was a second prison cap when the Secretary of Corrections made a statement that he wasn't going to accept any new inmates unless the city built him a 3,000-bed pretrial detention facility. That resulted in pushing all the new arrestees into the police districts. And again, it violated the first prison cap because they were housing them 2, 3 to a cell. Our personal assessment when we went out and looked at those police stations, even though the question was limited in federal court to housing more than 2 or 3 per cell, we went out and inspected those facilities, and we found that our report was much worse than what Radofsky and the Prison Society was litigating in federal court. So I would be very interested in a very specific, detailed report of the police and fire stations, what their status is. And I'm glad that, Commissioner, you weren't here when that grievance was filed, but I'm glad that assessment was done. But it's unacceptable to the President, it's unacceptable to Councilman Nielsen and all members of council that the threat to have to close these facilities at any time or work in deplorable conditions when the biggest issue, aside from education, is public safety, both on the police and fire side, that these conditions continue to exist and have for an extended period of time. The study is valuable, but I think what we're looking at right now is what the immediate impact is going to be over this next year, and I hope that it's significant. So I'd like to see that comprehensive assessment, and I would also like to ask the President to invite myself and other members of council to go to the 22nd and maybe go to some of these other districts and compare your report to a hands-on inspection that we may be able to engage in. I think our participation and understanding of what those critical issues are before we hire a consultant to study this for $1 million is part of our responsibility and our due diligence.
And actually as you say that, we are actually going out and auditing, doing a physical audit. 2 of my deputies and myself go out. We've actually been going out on every other week on Friday afternoons to each of the districts to actually look. We bring the assessment report. And we say, okay, is this what's going on here? And they've been pretty dead on so far, which is good. So what we do is, and then we're moving on each of those districts. You know what I mean? Some of the issues obviously are larger, and they require capital investment for us to actually fix. Some of the MEP, the mechanical, the electrical, the plumbing. Some of them are as simple as flooring or outlets or paint or something like that. So we've been going in, getting the low-hanging fruit per se, and then putting capital, and our facilities guys going in on complete jobs. So you go into a place and you get out. So you go in and do the whole thing. So we actually are doing that, and I will absolutely let the council president know when those visits are scheduled. We could do a special one for the 22nd, but anyone that wants to tag along on these other ones that we're going to, we'll send you the complete schedule, if that would help, and the link to the...
We have our guys here. I called for a camera. We're going to be going out there later on today, 22nd.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, thank you. Oh, my God. Thanks, I appreciate that. But the full link is absolutely, I'll send it to you where you can see each one. And like I said, it's very detailed, and it has an action plan for each specific component of each specific current building.
Thank you.
And to address the grievance real quickly, that older grievance, we do meet with the FOP and the police department. The police department, public property, and the FOP meet monthly. We call it a working group. But what we do is we've shared this assessment, and with this, the working group said we need a plan. So that's when we said obviously we do. So we came up with the assessment. But what we do in that group is we address individual issues, work on the plan going forward, tell them where we're going to be next and what we're doing. And the initial grievance contained, I want to say it was about 900 actual issues, like real issues with pictures and a description. So they have all been resolved on the public property facilities, and they've all been resolved. Not that that's the way we would do things, like to piecemeal and then be reactive, but we wanted to get them out of the way first and then concentrate on the bigger picture and getting these things done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Greenlee is next. Just one quick question. It appears that the city has been quite successful recently in obtaining significant federal grants, Tiger grants in particular. We spent $50 million on the Park Plaza, whatever we call it, Dilworth, and $18 million, I'm hearing, on the boardwalk, on the Schuylkill.
That's, I believe, Michael DeBerdinis is working on that, yes.
Yeah, I see Mike's in the back. My point is, that, are there similar public safety grants available from the federal government? Because we've done well on Tiger grants with respect to transportation, but public safety is kind of pretty high up there. I would think that each department, each category would have grants. Are there any public safety grants that we can be in a position to spend $18 million on a new 22nd Police District facility, or $50 million across the city on neighborhood commercial corridors?
It's an interesting question. I know we've gotten some grants in that area. I don't know if there's been the opportunity to have grants that sizable, but I think that's a very good question. I mean, we can get back to you on that.
All right. I mean, Homeland Security. I mean,
I know we do get some money.
I mean, didn't we get Homeland Security for the facility down there, Councilman, in your district? Yeah, the big,
The Divic.
Yeah. 20th in Oregon.
right, okay. All right, I just,
Okay,
you know,
no,
I'm
we'll
interested because
we'll get back to you.
we've been very successful in transportation. I'm like, why can't we
Right, apply that to
have
other
similar
areas.
success?
Okay.
Councilman Greenlee, I'm sorry.
1 second. Thank you, Mr. President. I think the other council people basically asked my question about the police and fire, but just so I'm really clear, what you're going to send, what you can share with us is a breakdown of each facility and how much plans to be spent on that and for what? Is that basically?
Yes, it will be each facility. It'll give you the condition number, that 1 through 5 number, actually what the inspection showed, and then a cost estimate to each one. So you'll have an estimate for every single thing that has to be done to a facility, and then the 1 through 3s, which are what we consider the most critical. So yes, it's every police station and every fire station.
Every fire station. Okay. All right, thank you. Switching to another department, the health department, and it's great what's being done for the health center too.
Okay.
And I want to make clear to Councilman Johnson, Councilman Squirrel, I think that's a great idea. But I bring up a lot, speaking about bringing up a lot, Health District 10 and the facility up there, which, and there's a couple problems with that, not just the physical site, well, this part of the physical site, they're just so overwhelmed with clients up there. Has there been any look at, I know a few years ago, former Commissioner Schwartz talked about, ideally he'd like to see a new building up there, or is there any plan to do anything there in the immediate future to try to improve the facility and thus improve the care that people are given there?
Right, there has been a good amount of discussion and some steps taken about what we should do. And you're absolutely right, the wait time was way too long in that health center. And as recently as a few months ago, the health department looked at possibly leasing a facility. There is the possibility that we would build a new health center there. I think that the health department is right now still working on the best way to move forward in that neighborhood.
Not to repeat what the council president said about the 22nd, but it's been a long time. And it seems to me that when you tell people our waiting time is 6 or 9 months, you're saying we can't help you. Because, who knows what could happen in 6 or 9 months, I don't want to say this is your fault. I'm just saying it just seems like that's, when I first heard the waiting time up at the 10th district, I thought somebody was kidding.
Right.
It was that bad, And it just seems that, and have you looked at, like, the South Philly site? It's great because in the partnership idea, is there any partnerships that can be or have been looked into up there with another health facility of some
I mean, I would defer to the health department
don't know if
on
anybody's
that.
here that can answer
I think so.
Point of information, just quickly, Mr. President. For the record, the 4th District has not had a health center, and just put that on the record. We have not had one, do not have one, cannot get one, and this is the 8th year I've said that. So,
Good. Figure that
Thank you,
when
Mr.
that redistricting comes up, we got to make sure you get one in your district. Councilman.
that might be the only way, Mr. President. That might be
I
the
know.
only way.
I know.
And hopefully when one is built there, they won't have to wait 6, 9 months for them.
All right. Might be quicker to do the redistricting. Yeah.
Morning, sir.
Good morning. My name's Dr. Jim Bueller. I'm the health commissioner for the city of Philadelphia. Took over from Dr. Schwartz last summer. The situation in Health Center 10 is something that came on my radar very quickly when I came into this position. And I think there's 2 questions there. One is expanding the physical space, but then also having the funds to support the staff to do that. With the Medicaid expansion that's now happening in Pennsylvania, that provides the opportunity to provide additional revenues that could be used to staff that additional space if we're able to get it. I am aware that we are adding 4 new exam rooms at Health Center 10, but we're also looking at additional alternatives. We did visit a site earlier this year, but it was a great building, but it wasn't in the right place in terms of having good access to public transportation, being really close to where the neighborhood is and where the business is. We've also had some conversations about alternative funding structures along the line of what we did with Health Center 2 as a public-private partnership. So we continue to explore that. We continue to be aware of it. I would also emphasize that we're in a very dynamic healthcare world right now with the Medicaid expansion, and that what that may mean is that in addition to the health centers that we operate, that might increase the market for additional community health centers to come in.
But if I could just finish up.
Yeah.
As we speak right now, in the budget, do you know how much money is allocated in capital for Health District 10 and to do what? You know,
I'd have to get back with you on the
Okay.
specifics. Yeah, there's a number of upgrades that we need to make to the existing
Yeah.
facility, but we can
Because
get
I
back
have been
with
up
you.
there, and I
Yeah.
know the workers up there and the clients are obviously very concerned. And is that
Yeah.
6-9 month waiting list, is that still, we're still in that same world? or-
I think we've made a little bit of progress, but it's still too long, and Health Center 10 remains an outlier in terms of the wait time for all our
Right, no,
facilities.
I know. And I know it's because the whole area expanded up there after
Yeah.
the thing was first built. so.
Right.
Okay, I took my time up. Sorry about that, Mr. President. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? Bridget, would you mind coming up for a second? So, not to beat a dead horse, but police and fire stations, once again. So, I've been to every police and fire station in my district, and I have to say, you know, I want to echo what everyone else has said. The conditions are really shocking. I mean, it's beyond appalling to see some of the conditions that we ask professionals to go to, who are City of Philadelphia employees, to go to every day. And I know that you know this, but I just really wanted to state that point, and the point that was made earlier in terms of, you know, we go to, you know, funerals for people who have lost their lives in the line of duty, and we say, you know, what a priority they are. But, you know, your priorities are shown in your actions and the way you treat your employees and the way you treat these things that are important. You know, you move them up on the priority list. And so I know you mentioned earlier that there was a system, like a rating system that we were you were preparing to give to each of us, and it was going to be sort of like a 1, 2, 3 system of what needs to be done and what will be done. And can you talk to us a little bit about that in terms of the priority, and when will those repairs be expected? You know, like what is the timeline for those repairs to be done?
Yes, I can. I actually have like a mini summary of the priority list with me
Okay.
that I could share as well. I only
That'd be
have a
great.
hard copy, unfortunately, with me. Yeah, so what we have is, like I keep beating this assessment, but based on the assessment, we came out with a list of priority lists. And some of them, like some of the capital jobs, like these mechanical, electrical, and plumbing jobs, they do take a little longer because they go through the bidding process. And then, but what we do is we bunch a few of them together. So those I anticipate would take as long as a capital job takes. So that could be anywhere within the year, you know, within the year amount. But these smaller jobs that we're doing, where we're actually going into each of the facilities and doing the site work and partnering with doing these jobs with job order contracting, like I was explaining earlier. We're also partnering with the PRA to do some smaller jobs, which I anticipate is going to take off and be very successful because we can get things moving really quickly. I anticipate us on a monthly basis just banging through everything. So you're going to see every month an update on here are the list of the 25 things that we think are our top priority. Okay, number 1's done, now go to number 26. You know what I mean? So we have a reporting structure in place now with this new system that we have where we feel that we can start to monitor a little better on the facilities end or more the operating end. And we're in the process of working with OIT and some of the other larger departments that use work orders and asset management on an actually fully robust asset management system, which is actually going to be able to pinpoint, okay, this facility is X amount of years old, and that's that's the prime time when we would go and replace Y, X, Y, and Z.
So there'll be a system in place to
There are going to be
monitor.
2 systems in place that will communicate with each other, and it's going to feed our work and allow us to report out. So what I anticipate happening is once we kind of get them both to interface with each other, once one's in place and interface, we'll be reporting out. And we've already spoken to the command at the police station. They had made a suggestion that we actually put like a measurement, like a metric stick in each of the police stations saying, and the fire stations, here's where we are, here are the 10 things we hope to fix in this police station, and here's where we are. So you're going to be able to hold us accountable by just looking at that on a daily basis or a monthly basis.
Well, let me ask you a question, though, and I think that's great to have a monitoring system, but, I would assume normally if you have a fire station, and this is something I've seen personally, if you have a fire station with a hole in the roof that you can actually see outside, that if the captain or commander or whoever reaches out to public property or their supervisor or, downtown, whatever, that should be in queue.
Yes.
So you don't need a monitoring system
No.
for something like that?
No.
So it should be, so something like that should be taken care of right away?
Yeah, we call that like reactive maintenance. So what happens is, okay, a hole appears or a leak appears or a leak appears or something. That's where we go out. It's the #1 priority. We get out there. We say within 24 hours. We usually get there within the hour, and we go and fix that particular issue.
Not exactly, because I can, and you and I, we can, have a conversation afterwards. And we may have actually talked about this in the past. But some of these conditions are really just outrageous and have been allowed to languish for a very long time. And so, the idea that there's going to be a monitoring system in place, I think is a good thing. But at the same time, some of these things shouldn't be happening. And also, when you mentioned that there were, some of the items have to be put out for bid, so it could be up to a year. I just think that because they've happened over such a long period of time, that a year is unacceptable. And I know that there are things that have to be done legally that you have to do, but if there is any way to speed up a timeline, I think that we have to do it, if we really mean that it's a priority.
I can give a good example of things that right into what you're speaking of, like as we call them, reactive maintenance. So we noticed with the fire department, we were having backup of their pipes in the fire department. So what we've done now is, I know I keep using the word assessment, but we've done a full assessment of all the laterals within the fire department. That's what causes the backups. And anyone that has a crack or it's broken, we fix them. So that problem should go away. And that was a problem 2 years ago that was happening on such a frequent basis, and that was one of those, you get a call and you go right out, because obviously there's what you don't want coming into a firehouse. So they're being taken care of. So roofs are another one. Roofs don't take as long. A new roof unfortunately does, but when our roofers can go out, like we have roofers on staff, to fix something, to go out, immediately and patch something.
Okay.
They're more of a patch job crew than a lay a whole new roof with systems on top or whatnot.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to, I have some other questions for some other folks, but I'll come back to you later. But I do want to say, like I said, I've been to some of these, some of these fire stations, and I've seen things that, are just unbelievable. And so, whatever we can do to address them in a more timely manner, I think is appropriate and that we could do. Thank you. Can I also talk to Mr. Greenberger?
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Good.
Good. I had a quick question for you. We're spending about an additional $5 million on neighborhood corridors for streetscape improvements. Can you tell me how much that'll get us? What will that buy us? About $5 million. What kind of expansion or improvements? As you know, particularly in my district, I have a number of commercial corridors that I've been fighting to, get some help with, that desperately need help. North 22nd Street, Germantown and Shelton, Germantown and Erie, I could go on, but Broad and Olney and so forth. So can you give us an idea of what that buys us?
Sure.
On a commercial corridor?
So Rebecca's handed me a list of various streetscape commercial corridor projects in the city, and they, leaving off the kind of odd ones, they range anywhere from several $100,000 of improvements in some projects to a couple of $1 million. The largest one in this list is $3.8 million, but they run the gamut in between, and it really depends on what needs to be done.
Okay.
Typically, for instance, like up in Germantown and up through Mount Airy, when the pedestrian lights go in, those are fairly expensive items on a per block basis.
Okay.
So it just varies with what's needed.
Have you identified how the funds will be, what corridors are, priorities?
There is a pipeline, and if you'd like us to talk about it, I'm going to ask our Deputy Commerce Director to come up and do that.
Okay.
All right, Karen?
Good?
Yeah, no, is that okay? Do I have time?
Yeah, is that all
Sure,
right?
Councilwoman.
Hello, Karen Begley, Deputy Commerce Director.
Hello,
Hi,
how are you?
Councilwoman. Good.
Good to see you.
So we are still determining which projects we would use the FY2016 funding for. We have a very long pipeline of projects. We sort of take requests from everyone, and then we have a short list, and we're going through a process of our own analysis of the commercial need, as well as how it is prioritized by council members, by the Planning Commission, Streets Department, and the Water Department. So we look to sort of leverage as much as we can and
Okay.
get the most bang for our buck.
My concern is that, $5 million is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money.
Yep.
And so even if we were spending it on one commercial corridor, we could run through $5 million, in a second. And so I don't know exactly if we're going to have the sort of impact that most people want to see in their neighborhood commercial corridor, so.
Yeah. No, you're right. We've talked about Shelton Avenue and how that would
Yes.
be a very expensive project to undertake. I can give a typical, I'm going to say a typical streetscape on a commercial corridor. So just like 5-block corridor where we're going to do curbs, sidewalks, ADA ramps, trees, benches, all that kind of stuff. Design and engineering all the way to finish building it is probably about $3.5 million. So
Or how many blocks would that be, would you say?
4 or 5 blocks.
For about 4 or 5 blocks?
Yeah.
So it's about $800,000, is that accurate? I think we had spoken about, roughly around that range.
That's a rough estimate, yeah.
To do all of those kinds of improvements on a commercial corridor?
Correct.
Okay.
So if I can add, one thing we've looked at to try to sort of how do we do more, how do we make greater impact is, again, leveraging other projects that are going on. If the streets department's going in, can we add a few components, something that isn't, sort of the functional stuff they would look at, but more of the amenities, can we add to that?
Okay.
And that's something that actually, Councilman Jones helped us sort of convene with the other city departments to really use our funds more wisely that way. We're also just looking at smaller but significant improvements. We just worked with Streets to upgrade the lighting at Germantown and Erie. You mentioned Germantown and Erie. And so
Yes.
there, it was a relatively inexpensive and relatively very quick project where in a couple of months we were able to upgrade all the LED lights in the existing street lights.
Oh, yeah.
But it made a huge impact.
Yes.
And so we're looking to do more of that stuff to complement, sort of like one big project a year and then complement it with some of those kind of upgrades in other places.
That was great. Council President and I were there and I think we got to flip the switch.
Flip the
to
big
turn it-
switch, right.
Yeah, so that was great. So we, want to see obviously more of that.
Yep.
But also I noticed that there's about a $24.8 million that's going to go into restoring historic streets, among other things. And so, I don't know if there's a possibility that, for some of the historic streets, particularly that are outside of the center city area, that they're going to be touched. And as you know, Germantown has a lot of those bricks, streets, cobblestone streets, brick sidewalks, all of that, and that they would be eligible on this commercial corridor for those funds as well.
Right. I think that's a Streets Department question. That's where that budget line falls, I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
of that.
Yes. He said
Right.
yes.
Yeah, it is a streets department question. And about 20 million of that money, though, is for just
Well,
the standard street repaving.
It's Streets Department, but it's also, because we've been discussing a street in particular in Germantown that's on the commercial corridor, that's why I thought that,
Well,
you
no,
would feel
and
comfortable
you're right,
having-
and I'm talking about that we're coordinating with Commissioner Perry, and so that's a good point. We should look and see, as the plans to do some of those historic streets, does that line up with our commercial corridor investments, and can we work together on that?
Yes.
And we haven't discussed that particular set of projects yet, so,
But that conversation is in the works, right?
sure.
Okay, great.
What are
Fabulous.
you doing after this?
All right. Commissioner, did you want to add?
Yeah, Dave Perry, Streets Commissioner. There are 319 blocks of historic streets in the city of Philadelphia.
319?
319. that the city of Philadelphia is responsible for. Most of those are smaller streets, and they are scattered throughout the city. There's a lot in northwest Philadelphia as well as in Old City and in Northern Liberties and the older neighborhoods of Philadelphia.
Do you have a list of where those streets are? That would be helpful.
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, we just finished a citywide assessment of all those streets so that we have a full accounting of their current condition and that we can prioritize them so that the monies that we do have are best used in going to the streets that need the most amount of repairs. We actually published that report on our website, but I'll be happy to send you a copy.
That'd be great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Commissioner, while you're here, I'm sorry, can you stay here for a second? And maybe Mr. Greenberger and maybe all of you, just real quick, I'm sorry. Colleagues hate to keep jumping in. But, the federal Tiger transportation grants that we've been quite successful in getting, both ourselves and Paul Levy, in terms of the eligibility, so let's get the boardwalk. The boardwalk, that was a federal transportation grant. Is it $18 million the appropriate number?
I don't remember exactly what the grant was, but I think that's the right number for the project.
18 million. So sidewalks and streets, would you say that they should be eligible for federal transportation dollars?
The sidewalks and streets, the sidewalks within Philadelphia are actually the responsibility of the adjacent property owner and are not eligible for federal funding. The Tiger projects that you're talking about, several of those were competitive grants. So the Mayor's Office of Transportation and Utilities put together a grant application and was able to capture that money. That's money that would not have normally come to Philadelphia in any way, and money that couldn't be used for any other purpose other than for the competitive grant that it was intended for.
So the money for the boardwalk, the NOFA, or Notice of Funding Opportunity, was only for a boardwalk?
Well, it was for trail projects and similar type of connectors for bicycles and pedestrians. So it was only of that particular project was eligible for the grant, but we couldn't have used it for neighborhood sidewalks.
All right. In commercial corridors, I know the residential thing is a little different, but the commercial corridors, at least here locally, our position is that it's for the public good, so we're able to use capital dollars. But you're saying in federal dollars, you can't use federal capital dollars for the public good?
On some of our transportation projects, we're able to do some sidewalk work, but it has to be part of an overall transportation project.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. Councilwoman Blackwell, you're back. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell. Let me skip. Yeah, this is from earlier. Okay.
That's all right. The
Okay.
mind is bad.
It's
Pass
okay.
me, I'll come back.
I understand.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, administration. I have a general request across the board for department heads. Last year, I sent a letter requesting that included in the testimony should be a breakdown of the upper levels of departments and staff composition in terms of gender and ethnicity. So that again this year, and the response I'll get back to you will be unacceptable, number one. Number two, particular attention will be paid to water and city parks and rec based on anecdotes I get throughout the year. So know that there's a strong interest in those two departments. And to President Clark's request, for all non-general fund projects in each department, a breakdown as well. So grants, like the grant you just spoke about, I'm curious to know how many of those employees were from Philadelphia, what the gender is, and what the ethnicity is. Especially in water and city parks and rec.
So just to make sure I'm clear on as it relates to the grants.
So there's X amount of thousands, millions of dollars that come into the water department
Right,
that are non-city general fund dollars.
right.
So with all those grants, I want that type of information.
About what it was spent on, or in terms of the employees?
Employees,
Okay,
MBE, WBE participation.
okay, I get it.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman O.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I have a question. I don't know the answer to this. You know, the budget says that it's $3 billion for the fiscal year 2016 and $8.9 billion for 2016 to 21. So that's the anticipated capital budget expenditures.
That's correct. That's all funds, the capital budget, and then the 6-year capital program.
And does that include, or I would assume it would not include, things like a riverfront development? That would not be, is that in that capital budget?
I mean, such as the Delaware River Waterfront Corp., or?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's certain projects that are riverfront development that are included in the capital budget.
So that's
Yes.
in there? Okay. So, for example, Southport, the state is developing Southport. And I understand it is quite expansive and very promising. So as they develop Southport, are we aware of, how are we aware of what they're doing?
I'm not familiar with Southport. I might ask the Commerce Department to come.
The shipping, export, import,
Okay.
so they're telling me it's double-digit growth that they're experiencing, and you know, the ports are developing on the East Coast, and there's a Greater Philadelphia Metro Export Plan with Brookings. I'm actually on the steering committee,
Okay.
and the anticipation of the development of Southport looks very promising right now. But as they develop, they run into other projects that may or may not happen. You know, the Naval Yard, Tioga Terminal,
Okay.
Those type of things. And as they develop, how do they inform us of their development so we can anticipate that there may be capital projects we need to prepare for to support the expansion of the commerce that occurs, for example, at the port?
I would ask the Commerce Department to answer that question, so that'll be Dwayne Bum.
Hello, Dwayne Bum, Deputy Commerce Director. Councilman O, the Southport project, which is under the auspices of the Philadelphia Regional Port Authority, a state authority, the capital expenditures for that would be within the state budget under the Penn Ports line item in the state capital budget. The Southport development site, as you know, is really at the Navy Yard. It's on real estate that is now owned by the state. And so we work closely with the state on the development of that development and all port properties, Packer Avenue Marine Terminal, Tioga Marine Terminal, and we coordinate at the city level. It's the Commerce Department coordinating on that, as well as the Mayor's Office of Transportation and Utilities, the Deputy Mayor for Transportation and Utilities sits on the board for the Philadelphia Regional Port Authority. So we do coordinate and very closely with our colleagues at the state level on that development. As you say, it's an important piece of infrastructure for economic development, as the ports are a major driver in our economy.
Yeah, the reason I ask is, for example, a good example is the Comcast Innovation Center. There's money set aside in this budget to connect the subway system or something, some infrastructure to support that important building. And as the state is developing, or the port is developing Southport, the scale of which I was not really aware of, and until I was speaking with them yesterday, the scale is more expansive than I thought it was. At least that's what they're saying. And I'm just curious that, when they develop something, to what extent are we in sync with them, not on their project, but on the city side, that we have to kind of link up and connect and support the logistics and those type of things. I also say that because we have like PES, and we have something that might happen at the Naval Yard, I understand, that increases the need for transportation capabilities, other things. And for example, if we don't, but possibly do LNG exports at the Tioga terminal, that changes the nature of the Tioga terminal. If it begins to proceed, if it doesn't proceed, that's kind of more theoretical. But for projects that are kind of planned and moving forward, I'm curious as to, like, as a council person, how do I see the tie-in between what is happening in those locations and their need being set aside in the capital program?
So at least part of the answer to that would be the state capital funding that oftentimes comes into the city and into the region is transportation funding. That funding is captured within the regional plan that is maintained by the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. The city is an active participant of that. The city's planning commission is a party to that. The Commerce Department with that. So when those sorts of, especially an example being major port improvements that can have other sort of transportation infrastructure needs, streets and highway improvements, connections that are needed, and other utility connections, those developments are all captured within that regional transportation plan. They become priority projects. Some of those projects in that transportation plan include projects where the city provides some capital funding for certain streets, bridges, or other sort of activities. The Southport project that you started with is one that ultimately will require some significant enhancements to the Delaware Avenue extension that needs to go all the way south from Packer Avenue and actually make the connection across literally dozens of railroad tracks. So that's another sort of plan that sits within that regional transportation plan where we all sort of sit at the table and coordinate.
Okay. I'm sorry to take one more question, Council President. In other words, is there a way I could see that in the, I know that is the state effort and budget, but it then, if it happens, then requires expenditures, I believe, from the city, unless we get state or federal funding. And so is there a way that we can see that since this project is moving ahead, that there is, some need for this capital project that is not reflected? I don't think it's reflected in the budget. It hasn't happened yet, but that we would anticipate an additional need of capital investment, bonds being issued, something. We'd have to raise more capital for that project, as we're kind of sure it's going to happen, but it's not in the paperwork that I could read. And I don't know how many other projects there are like that.
Right. So the regional transportation plan is a multi-year plan. And so the way we would sort of sync with that would be within the city's capital program. So it wouldn't be in the upcoming FY2016 plan necessarily, but we could, if we sort of understand from the regional plan, a major project is projected for 3 years out, and if it required city investment as well, we would start to build that sort of capital request in out years in our capital program. That's sort of where you would see it, and generally you would see it within the city's capital plan generally would be within streets department because it generally would be a transportation issue.
Okay, I'll just end that what I'm looking for, I might not be able to get. I could get all those different plans and read through it. Is there a way to simplify it and kind of put it into something we could see? I don't need an answer. That's really what I'm looking for. So I don't have to chase all these different, plans and financial things in all kinds of separate areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is, I know last year we did additional revenue for the maintenance of city-owned buildings, right? We added
Into the operating budget.
into the operating
Right.
budget. All right, so that's not today. So we'll talk about that.
Right.
How about as far as, I see here that we're, in the capital budget, we're increasing new voting machines for $25 million? Who is that, who are we working in conjunction with to decide on the voting machines and what voting machines we should look at, and how is that going to proceed?
Well, right now, we're just in the exploratory phase. An RFP hasn't been released yet for that. Everett Ellison, the Chief of Staff, and Adele Abid and I, along with the Al Schmidt from the City Commissioners, have met 2 or 3 times to talk about sort of broad base what the options are. There is a list of state-approved technologies that are allowed to be used for voting machines, so we don't have the level of flexibility perhaps in looking at some of the newer technologies, is my understanding, that we might want to have. But again, we're just at the very beginning stages of that.
But this money is going to be in, this $25 million will be included in this year's budget?
$22 million in the 16 budget, that's right. The goal is to have those voting machines up and running for the May 2017 election.
And what is the machines that we have now failing?
They are what's called end of life, or they're past their useful life. So, and this is true across the country, that back in, I believe it was 2002, when HAVA money was distributed across the country, that municipalities, local governments bought voting machines, and now they're past their useful life. So this issue was raised by the City Commissioner's Office to the city last year, and the timing was such that they thought it was best to purchase to get ready for the May 2017 primary for that.
If that's the case, and we know there's new technology coming out because there's been studies to show the new technology that may be available, what is the rush to do it right now? And you said by 17 or 18 because it's a down year, or maybe a low
Right,
election.
it's a smaller election is my
year.
understanding.
Right. But when we could use our resources for better things now, and then the opportunity of the new, I mean, were people recommending the open source software deployed, and looking at different technologies, our state would then probably go with those new technologies in order to save money, where instead of spending $25 million, maybe we could spend $8 million. So why wouldn't we look at that instead of rushing into that right now?
My understanding of it, and I'll, Adele Abid could come up and speak more about the technology aspect of it, is that, we need to get this in place now, because what we don't want to happen is to have problems with our voting machines going down because of outdated machines. I mean, we don't want to have a bigger problem than the smaller issues that we encounter now.
Obviously, we don't want that either.
Right, I don't
especially
think-
since we're all
right.
running. So, I mean, but we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. We're not going to spend money that's unnecessary, or that we're going to look at better ways, new software, new opportunities that are out there. And knowing that that's available in the future, I think it would make sense to make that part of our our scale as far as looking at it.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point, and I'll let Adele
Sure.
respond more.
Yep. Adele Abate, CIO, City of Philadelphia. Councilman Squilla, we've been doing exactly what you just suggested, which is we actually first went out with what's called an RFI, a request for information. And the goal of the RFI was really to study the marketplace and see how much it's changed since the last push for the Help America Vote Act, which was back in 2002, 2004. So we got a pretty good idea of how the entire marketplace for voting has really evolved over the last 10 years. At the same time, we are also trying to understand where the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is going with certifying newer technology. We've also reached out to the open source consortium in DC to try to understand what the entire open source movement is bringing to increasing voter turnout and increasing voter participation. So I think all of those things are going to go into a new RFP that we would issue. And if it results in a cheaper outcome, that's great. I think the $22 million that Rebecca mentioned is sort of the worst case scenario. If you take the average cost to replace each machine times the number of machines that the city of Philadelphia has, that would probably be in the upper limit. But I think there's been a lot of progress in technology over the last 4 or 5 years. We're also watching some other jurisdictions around the country and what they're doing to try to bring newer technology. At the end of the day, I'm told that whatever we put in place must be certified by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So that is one factor that will weigh heavily on our decision.
So it is a possibility then that if we do go with newer technology that may end up being cheaper, that we would have a reserve of additional dollars that will be set aside?
Time will tell, and I think we certainly would revisit that when we get the responses back to the RFPs and see what the cost is to implement countywide.
Well, you said you are working with the state to see if they would be open to accepting new technologies as part of this, the open source especially.
Yes, and we have that as a milestone to meet with the new administration and try to understand what they're even doing at the state level.
Okay, and you're working with our commissioner's office, and I guess, is any other people, Committee 70, any other folks that you guys are interested in working with on this, or who's driving it basically?
So there's a steering committee that meets. Rebecca said we've met 3 times already to try to take this. We started out with a sort of the city commissioners raised the flag that the machines are old, they're starting to fail. We better do something. Let's put a steering committee in place. Let's study the options. Let's put in a budget request. Put the RFP in place. So we meet periodically to review the progress on that. I'm certainly aware of the report that the Committee of 70 has issued on that, and I think that's been a great amount of input into the RFI and the eventual RFP. Commissioner Al Schmidt is a member of the steering committee as well.
And how many members on the steering committee?
So I think there's myself, Rebecca, Chief of Staff Everett Gillison, the Managing Director Rich Negrin, and Al Schmidt.
Okay. I mean, it's just good, I think, to have the input of, the electorate and other people. I mean, I'm sure the Commissioner's office is very important, obviously, since they run the elections and need to have a say in that. And I think Committee of 70 also should be involved in the process. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell.
Thank you. I know I mentioned this the last few years, but there was talk about us refurbishing and opening the George's Library at the edge of my district, and I wanted to know what the status of that project might be.
I would have a representative from either the library or public property. The library perhaps come up and speak to that.
Ms. Harity.
Okay.
Saw her here earlier. Ms. Harity was here earlier.
I can wait for the answer, Mr. President. I don't have to have it today.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I'm sure we'll have callbacks. Well, you want to just have...
Do you want it? Can you?
Oh, we have some. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
council members. My name is Joe Benford. I'm the Deputy Director of the Free Library of Philadelphia. Councilwoman, you're asking about the George Institute Library.
Yes.
We still have plans to resurrect that library. It was originally part of our, excuse me, of our 21st Century Library Initiative, but it's not in Phase 1, which includes the South Philadelphia Library, Tacony, Lillian Marrero, and the Lovett Memorial Library, but it will be in the next phase.
Okay. You have any idea on the timeline for that?
Not at the moment, because this projected project probably will last another 2 years, the first phase, and then we would need to begin fundraising for the second phase.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Got a couple of things I want to run through real quick. It's in terms of capital expenditures on publicly owned facilities other than City of Philadelphia facilities. Is there a set policy, or do we do it on a case-by-case basis? Because as an example, I know on a number of occasions, we have gotten certain agreements to put playgrounds on school-owned properties. And I'm not sure if there were other publicly owned locations that we were able to spend capital dollars on. Is there a set policy, or do we just enter into a lease agreement? I mean, it kind of seems like we kind of make it up as we go, because I know I participated in a couple of different formats.
I mean, there needs to be a long-term lease that is longer than the useful life of the improvements in order for us to use capital dollars.
Has to be 5 years? What's the timeline for capitals? 5 years?
Yes.
Lifetime?
Right, that at least, but, right, exactly.
So is that the set policy?
The set policy, yes, would be if we have a long-term lease, I mean, I would have to look at the details, but yes, just on that basis.
Okay.
If we have a long-term lease, go ahead.
The city needs to demonstrate some sort of an ownership interest in the property in order to legally spend public dollars on it. So, you know, ownership or a long-term lease or some other arrangement with a property interest.
So is that just with the school district, or is it any public agency?
It would probably be with any public agency. I mean, if we had a long-term lease on another public agency's
Okay.
property.
Now, I'm asking that because, well, I know we've done a couple of rec centers, and I'm sorry, schools, and we put play equipment in the yards, and gotten a request from the Housing Authority. They want us to contribute to a community center that they're going to build in a neighborhood, capital dollars, and I wasn't sure that if I can be in the position to put some of the capital dollars in my district.
Most likely, you would not be unless we could figure, if there was a construct that enabled, that the city was actually using, having a long-term lease and using that property.
Right. Okay. All right. I'm going to go back. I keep pulling these books out, so I'm just letting you know, I'm going, every day during the budget process, I'm going to pull one of these books out that reflect the posters that some of you all weren't here the first day. So we talked about health centers, and I know Councilman, I think Greenlee referenced a health center. Councilwoman Blackwell's talking about a library. So one of the things that in this proposal, school-based family centers, that we believe, and I hate to keep going through the speech, but you always have a different audience every day. So this whole approach to schools is making sure that schools, because there's one in every neighborhood, could basically be the focal point of the community. And having a school with all of the support and the resources, not only for the children, but for the neighborhoods, would be something that would be beneficial. And particularly as we talk about health-related issues, and I know we talk about health centers, and if there is, and that's why I asked you the first question, the willingness to locate, say for instance, a health center, a newly built health center or health center services in a school, that's something that we can do under the aforementioned structure. So if the Amy 6, I bring that up again yesterday, there's a portion of the school, an annex that's connected to the school is vacant space. So could we spend capital dollars to establish a health center in that building? And then we have a contract with the school district where the children can have access to the healthcare facility, but also because we have an external door on Ridge Avenue that the community can have access to that.
So it's actually a separate facility next to the
Yeah,
school?
it's just connected by a hallway, but it's all on school property. And we have a number of those places where the school population is down, so we have vacant space. So
That's an interesting idea.
I'm sorry.
No, that's an interesting idea. I mean, I would want the law department to look at it, and then there'd also be the operating costs we'd need to look at.
I'm gonna give you one of these.
I would love one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, I mean, and we're not.
But it is an
reinventing the
interesting
wheel.
idea in terms of providing services to the largest number of citizens.
Right.
Right.
Right. And similarly, if library services, if there's vacant space and we spend capital dollars to do library services in the school and other city support services, would make sense to have that the focal point. Because again, I say it's in every neighborhood you have a school. So we can have these services, and the reality is, based on the statistics, is that healthcare, be it physical and mental, is one of the most significant challenges to young people in public school systems. And unfortunately, we no longer have school nurses to any real degree. We don't have enough counselors, but yet we have them out of the city's budget in another place. We put, goo gobs of money at CBH and DHS, and we're always asking the parent to take the child over here and get services. So why don't you just put the services in the school building?
It's an interesting idea that I'd also like to talk to DBH about.
Well, yeah, we're going to. Yeah,
You want
prepared.
to do? Okay.
Well, we sent a letter to the mayor yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Outlining the budget process, and we listed a number of things that we're going to be asking for, because our whole issue is about how we spend our money should be based on the priority as it relates to the people and not necessarily the department. And we do the same thing every year. We come in here, we ask you all a bunch of questions that you answer, and the next year we ask you the same questions, because we ask the same questions every year. And it's getting kind of a little old. Half the time we already know the answers. That's why we ask you, right? So I'm saying, let's try something different. Let's prioritize based on what people actually want. And that's why I'm beating you guys up about this police station where we got this, and we're spending all this money on boardwalks and trails and all this other stuff. So this is it's something I really like for us to collaborate on and work with, because this is and it's been done in other cities, so we're not inventing this.
Right.
All right. So
Okay,
if you
good.
can, you just get the law department sign off on that in terms of what made some sense, what we can do in terms of actual policy, or the regulations established with that. We can, because we have actually been out over the last several months identifying locations that make some sense in terms of co-locating services in these schools across the city, because we think it will lessen the cost associated with us having to operate these schools. Personally, this is my personal preference. I'd rather have us take the money that we in the city have as opposed to sending the money up to the school district and have no idea where it's going to get spent, like we do now. We raise people's taxes, send $30 million up there. Who knows where the money goes? I'd rather have the money go to support services that are in the schools, we understand.
Okay.
So we're going to be talking to you about that real soon. And similarly, actually saw somebody sent me something, this booklet, Movado or something. I got a little thing, Councilman Jones sent it to me. Did you see it? And he talked about the importance of neighborhoods, and I said, man, he stole our idea. We're looking at a sustainability initiative, and you talk about these neighborhoods of choices, and one of the things they talked about was amenities, and they were talking about commercial corridors. And they talked about the importance of really strong commercial corridors. And as we talk about these capital improvement dollars, we do know that we can spend money on capital improvement. So we would really like to see those type of projects prioritized, because not only do we say it in our document, other people say it. When we say it, people kind of ask the city council. But when the trade magazines say it, then sometimes people kind of think that it has some validity to it. So again, we're going to ask you to really kind of dig your teeth into it and for the departments that come ahead, because I know you're kind of in charge of the budget process.
Okay.
Right? So thank you very
Sure.
much. I had one last question, and then there was a couple other members. I'm sorry. Councilwoman
On
Brown.
the letter you sent to the administration, I want to highlight and underscore that our interest is too linked to how well departments may or may not be connected to the school district, where is some of the glue between departments and the school districts. For example, what city departments have internships in their department as a result of a linkage with the school district? So we want to deepen the relationship with the school district so we can see where we can have cost savings and not always look at tax increases as the answer, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
So as city departments prepare, know that we will be looking for that and looking for those innovative ways in which departments have connected with the school district in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
Okay, we will pass that along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman O'Brien?
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. You good? And then lastly, for me, the capital program at page 30, you reference capital program shows $3 million added to city council, ITEF, marked as funding from other government agencies. Can you explain that to me? Does that have anything to do with old requests? Or just like, if you could just...
Yes, with that, that I believe, was that the NTI? That is we are working with the PRA, and I believe, on getting the NTI, the remaining NTI money spent down. And this was a mechanism that enabled us, we can transfer the money and spend it in the capital budget. So I think if Brian Abernathy from the PRA might still be here, I'm not sure. No? No? Okay. We can get you more information on how that works. That's something that Brian's been working on in terms of getting the remaining bond proceeds spent down, and this was a way to get it into the appropriations end.
Oh, okay. So wasn't it like 30-something million in bond proceeds? Or is this the NTI bond proceeds? This NTI?
This is NTI.
Oh.
I really would like to get you more information to follow up with you, because this was the amount that was
All right,
given
no,
to
I
us
heard
by
it
the
was-
PRA.
I heard a rumor about a year ago that they had identified about $30 million in old bond proceeds the RDA had, and we were waiting to see when that money was going to surface. But this is not that. Okay.
Let me follow up with you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. That's what I had. Oh, I'm sorry. What was it? Last year, the Betsy Ross? Was it the Betsy Ross house? So last year, let me make sure. Okay. Capital program, page 45, shows $4.5 million, which is appropriated for free library improvements in FY15. Only 2.1 is carried forward to 16. We amended the FY15 capital budget program to include an additional $2.4 million to match the redevelopment of NARCAP, which was supposed to launch the 21st Century Libraries initiatives, resulting in the renovation of every neighborhood library. This is the question. What's the status? Was that somebody, I think Councilman, who was just referencing the libraries? What's the status?
That was about the 21st Century Library Initiative. That was the update.
What we just talked about?
Right.
All right. So the amended dollars were
So
only for phase one? Were only going to be in phase one?
So I believe it's about, we've raised over $20 million of private money to match the city commitment. So there's, I think, 5 libraries that are being focused on first, significant investments in those.
Okay. All right, and what's the status of the amendment that we did last year for the Betsy Ross and the Philadelphia History Museum?
That money's, I don't know if it's been used yet, it's definitely available. It's available to be used, so it will be used shortly if it hasn't been used.
Is it teed up? I mean, because, we do stuff, and you guys sometimes they say or whatever. and you-
Yes, it became available in December after the vote is approved in November,
But it is.
but it's completely available and ready
committed.
to be used.
It's committed? Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. See, there are no additional questions, so this time, this committee will stand in recess until Tuesday, April 7, 2015, at 10 a.m., at which time we will reconvene in room 400, City Hall. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.